Hello, everyone. God the Father is light, and the Father was abiding in Jesus, doing the works, as Jesus himself testified. And it was for that reason that Jesus was the light of the world. All the children of God are the light of the world, just as God's firstborn child, Jesus, was the light of the world. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light shine before men, so that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. First, let's look at this. Let your light shine before men so that they may see your good works. And then a little later, Jesus says, beware of practicing your righteousness before men to be noticed by them or seen by them. Otherwise, you have no reward with your Father who is in heaven. So when you give to the poor, do not sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, so that they may be glorified by men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward in full. But when you give to the poor, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving will be in secret, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Did Jesus contradict himself here? Let your light shine before men, so that they may see your good works. And then he says, beware of practicing your righteousness before men to be seen by them or noticed by them. These sound at first like total opposite things. But when we look a little closer, we see the difference. The works of the disciples of Jesus glorify God the Father who is in heaven. In Matthew 6, Jesus is talking about men doing the works of men so that they may be glorified by men. And in the end result is that men are glorified instead of the Father who is in heaven. Works of men to be glorified among men, men seeking applause and approval from men. Men loving approval of men rather than the approval of God. The church system is full of that. Men deciding for themselves what works out of themselves that they shall do, as if they themselves serve their master by deciding what works they will do that are good for him. So in the end, they do their own will, their own works, rather than the will of God and his works. And then they wonder why this happens. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father, who is in heaven. And they say, didn't we do this, Lord? Didn't we do that? And he will say, I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. This is what happens when your works are all your own and by your own design, rather than the will of the master of the house. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I say? And someone said to him, Lord, are there just a few who are being saved? And he said to them, strive to enter through the narrow door. For many, I tell you, will seek to enter and will not be able. Once the master of the house gets up and shuts the door, and you begin to stand outside and knock on the door, saying, Lord, open up to us. Then he will answer and say to you, I do not know where you are from. Then you will begin to say, we ate and drank in your presence, and you taught in our streets. And he will say, I tell you, I do not know where you are from. Depart from me, all you evildoers. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. You won't be fooling the Lord with your empty lip service, Lord, Lord routine on that day. He knows whether he himself had anything to do with the works in question. Beware of practicing your righteousness before men to be seen by them. The worldly church system is full of this. Men wanting to be approved by men, men wanting to be glorified by men. It's all over the place. You see it routinely. It's just commonplace. And the worldly church system has none of this, save perhaps a few souls here and there. It's very rare. You are the light of the world. God the Father is light, and just like he was abiding in his firstborn Son, Jesus, the Father is abiding in all the genuine children of God. And he is the source of this light in those who do his will rather than their own. And that is why men of the world will see this light and glorify the Father instead of men. For by grace you have been saved through the faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not as a result of works, so that no one may boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for a purpose, for good works, which God prepared beforehand so that we would walk in them. God is light, and as Jesus said, the Father abiding in me does the works. The same is true of all the children of God. They do not their own works by their own design, but works of God, which he prepares for them to do. The works of God. And for that reason, they are the light of the world. The Father abiding in them does the works. And for that reason, men glorify the Father who is in heaven. So then, my beloved, just as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who is at work in you. Just like Jesus said, the Father abiding in me does the works. God who is at work in you both to will and to work for his good pleasure. This is why they glorify your Father who is in heaven. God is light. God the Father is light. And the Father abiding in the children of God prepares these good works for them to do. Just like Jesus said, the Father abiding in me does the works. Children of God, the Father created you for this purpose. You are his workmanship, his doing. If indeed you do his will. The worldly church system does their own works, by their own design, their own agenda, their own schedule, their own will. Their works are their own doing, their own workmanship, and they pretend their darkness is light. But you, children of God, you who are born of God and who know our Father, you are indeed the light of the world, for God himself is at work in you to do his works, not your own, which he prepares through you, his servants. Children of God, the Father created you for this purpose. You are his workmanship, his doing. You must let your light shine. You must bear fruit. This is your purpose. You are God's own testimony of himself to the world. You are the proof of God to the world. You who are genuinely his begotten child. You who do his will rather than your own. You who are truly led by the Spirit of God and are not just a pretender. We are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus. You must bear fruit. This is your purpose. That same Spirit testifies with our spirit that we are children of God. He who keeps his commands, speaking of the Father, abides in him, the Father, and the Father in him. We know by this that he abides in us by the Spirit which he has given us. By this we know that we abide in him, the Father, and he in us, because he has given us his Spirit. I am speaking to those who have this testimony within themselves. I am not speaking to those who do not. Children of God, you must bear fruit. He has created you for this purpose. You are the evidence of God in this world. The evidence of God in this world is not some man's philosophical argument, nor any man's theological wisdom, nor a paper and ink book. It is you. If indeed he is abiding in you, and greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world. Our God and Father is light, and if that light is in you, then you are the evidence of him in this world. You are the testimony of God. You must testify and be his witnesses. You must let your light shine before the world. You must bear fruit or be cut down and thrown into the fire. Every tree that does not bear fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Abide in me and I in you, just as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, so neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him, he bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is thrown away as a branch and dries up, and the branches are gathered and cast them into the fire, and they are burned. You must bear fruit to God. Do not fix your eyes on how they do things in the worldly church system. They are lost, and they do not know the way. They're just stumbling around in darkness. They're only the blind leading the blind into the pit. Rather, fix your eyes on Jesus, the author of our salvation. He blazed the way. He walked the walk. He knows the way. Do not fix your eyes on a Jesus that is no more than a paper and ink doctrine of men, but fix your eyes upon the authentic Christ, he who dwells in you. Christ in you, your hope of glory. Those who are led by the Spirit of God, these are the sons of God. Those who do his will, the Father's will. Those who live by their own decision-making and their own design only lead themselves into deeper and deeper darkness. You must bear fruit to God, children of God, or be cut down and cast into the fire. And you can only bear fruit if you have the Spirit of God in you, and you are led by his Spirit to know his will. The worldly church system practices a farce, a pretend Christianity. Their fruit comes from within they themselves and the self-serving desires of their own flesh, rather than from God. You children of God, you who have the testimony of God himself dwelling in you, you are the light of the world, and you are the Father's glory. The worldly church system bears rotten fruit, but you children of God are those who do the works of God, which he prepares for you to do. Good fruit, the fruit of the Spirit of God, the Spirit dwelling in you. You are the light of the world, so let your light shine before men. You must bear fruit, or be cut down and thrown into the fire. You, children of God, are the testimony of God in this world. Our God's testimony of himself is not a creed, is not a systematic theology, is not a letter from Paul to the Romans. It's not a paper and ink Bible canon. It's you. You are the testimony of God. You are the place where the Spirit of the living God dwells. That's why you must let your light shine and bear fruit or be cut down and thrown into the fire. Yield up yourselves as living sacrifices to God then, to know his perfect will, and then do it. The works he prepares for you to do. The works of God shining through you into this dark world. And the world will hate you, just as Jesus warned. Count the cost. You are the light of the world. You must bear fruit. Let your light shine so that the world may see the good works of our Father, which he prepares, and so that men may glorify our God and Abba Father who is in heaven. Children of God, you cannot be idle, for those who do not bear fruit will be cut down and cast into the fire. You are the light of the world. You are God's workmanship, and he has created you for this purpose, to bear fruit and do God's good works which he prepares. So let your light shine so that the world might see the light of God in contrast to the darkness of this world, including the darkness of worldly Christianity. Those in the worldly church system are there for themselves. They come to have their itching ears tickled, for they show up for the getting and not the giving. It is about their own salvation ticket, which they wish to obtain for themselves. And they decide for themselves how they will serve God according to their own design, their own agenda, their own will, rather than God's. They say, Lord, Lord, but they do not do what he wills, but what they will, and they decide to do for him, as if they are doing him a favor. They are out of their minds, for it is not the servants of the house who decide what will be done, but the Lord of the house. Our God and Father lets his true servants know his will by his Spirit. But those in the worldly church fix their eyes on what they want for themselves, their own salvation ticket, their fire insurance, their agenda for when and how they will serve God. It's all about what they want, as if they themselves are the masters of their own destinies. They are madmen at work. You won't be the light of the world by your own self-declaration, as so many seem to think in the worldly church system. They think they can just declare it is so, and then it is so. God decides, not us. God only gives his Spirit to those who obey him. If you are willing to serve God rather than serving yourself, then submit to him, and his will and his light will indeed shine in you and through you, and you will be his testimony to this dark world. Little children of God, you who are born of God, you who are out of God, you who are from God, you who are children of heaven rather than the world, you who have the testimony of God himself in you, you are the light of the world. Let your light shine. You must bear fruit or be cut down and thrown into the fire. God has no use for you if you don't fulfill his purpose for you. He created you for this purpose. The children of God are the light of the world. Give no regard to the approval of men or the disapproval of men, and seek only the will of God and his approval. God who vindicates and exalts all those who humbly obey him.